Here's 3.1c for calculus, and what we're approximating for this estimate is reminding you that an estimate for f prime of 3.5 is some sort of difference quotient of numbers around it. So as you look at numbers around, you could just approximate by using the y values. So I would just go in order, 4 minus 3. So your y coordinates would be 1 minus negative 2 as they match up like that. So we're looking at 3 over 1. So the best approximation is just 3. Now you do not want to use the derivative, but you just want the y values here. So as we look at the next problem, if we're finding q prime of 4, first you want to figure out what q prime of x is. Now this is not the product rule. This is just the power rule. 2f prime of x minus 4g prime of x. We put that in there to try and confuse you. So if we want q prime of 4, it's just 2 times f prime of 4 minus 4 times g prime of 4. So we're looking at 2 times, let's see, f prime of 4 is 2, minus 4 times g prime of 4 is negative 3. So we're looking at 4 plus 12, which is 16. Again, pause the video, soak this in if you need help. Now the next one, I like to just write as we find the derivative. I just like to rewrite that negative 2 anyway. You could factor it out. Some students do that, and then just the product rule of f of x times g of x. But my brain doesn't really work that way. I just distribute that negative 2 and attach it to something. So the derivative of f is f prime. Leave g alone, and then again I'm distributing that negative in there. That's why it's still there. Negative 2, I guess I should say. G prime of x. So now as I find p prime of 3, I know it's negative 2. I'm going to go to the chart. I'm tired of rewriting stuff. F prime of 3 is negative 4. G of 3 is negative 3. Minus 2 times f of 3. F of 3 is negative 2. And then g prime of 3 is 2. Double check that you got the same answers, because you never know with me, I'm going to make a mistake. So you get 8, that'd be negative 24, and then that will turn into plus 4, 8. So we're looking at negative 16 for that approximate slope. And then this next one is definitely a product rule. That's a v, by the way, v prime of x. You're looking at 3x, leave f, 3x squared, leave f alone, plus leave x cubed alone times f prime of x. And now we're going to find b prime of negative 1. Now remember, you're plugging in negative 1 for all these x's. Well, when you square negative 1, it's positive. F of negative 1 is this value down here, 2. So 3 times 2. And then plus negative 1 when you cube it is negative 1. And f prime of negative 1 is this value right here, 1. So our slope is 6 minus 1 is 5. Now remember, that's v prime. That's going to be the slope in our problem. What we still need to do is figure out what the point is. Now the point has the x-coordinate of negative 1. Well, how do you find the y-coordinate? Plug it into the original equation. Negative 1 when you cube it, it's still negative 1, times f of negative 1, which was 2 we found earlier. So negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. So our point, or our equation of the tangent line, your slope, x minus your x-coordinate, and then, because you'd be adding that term over or subtracting that term over, minus 2. So we just have one more problem to finish these notes, and we throw a lot at you, but if you identify where the product is right there, it's pretty straightforward. So the derivative of the left side is just 2f prime of x. Remember, the derivative of 3 is 0, so there's no reason to write that, times by the right function, and then plus, leave the left function alone, times the derivative of the right function. Remember, the derivative of 3 is 0, so it's just negative g prime of x. So as we find k prime of 3, it's 2 times f prime of 3. I'll go back to your chart. F prime of 3 is negative 4. And then you have 3 minus, what's g of 3? G of 3 is negative 3. Two f of 3 is negative 2. Times the negative of g prime of 3. G prime of 3 is 2. And then it's just a lot of simplifying. So I would go ahead and do it my own way, but negative 8 times 6, and then what would that be? Negative 4 plus 3 would be negative 1 times negative 2. So I'm looking at negative 48 plus 2. It would be negative 46. So again, pause the video, make sure you understand, come to class with questions, and you should be ready for the homework now.